I'm your host, Shweta Sharma, and welcome to today's session where we unpack the biggest shifts happening in marketing right now. Our discovery, data, and decisioning are being fundamentally reshaped by AI, and most importantly, what brands need to do to stay ahead. To help us navigate this transformation, I'm joined by three exceptional leaders who bring deep expertise across customer acquisition, digital transformation, governance, and marketing strategy. I'm pleased to welcome our first panelist, Ruth Stevens, a globally respected B2B marketing authority with over 3 decades of experience in optimizing acquisition and retention. She has held senior leadership roles at IBM, Time Warner, Jeff Davis, and today serves as president of eMarketing strategy and adjunct professor at New York University. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We're also joined by Jasmine Martirossian, CEO and board advisor at Strategy Arc. She brings over 2 decades of experience in digital transformation, e-commerce growth, and revenue marketing for organizations like PTC, Intertech, Skillsoft, CSA Group, Lesley University, and more. Thank you for joining us today, Jasmine.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for welcoming me.
And finally, we have Arwinder Kaur, Vice President of Marketing at Grazitti Interactive. With more than 26 years of experience in business transformation and marketing strategy, she has held leadership roles at Capgemini, IBM, and Intel. And today she brings a strong execution lens to our discussion. Arwinder, welcome on board.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you everyone for being here. And let's start with the shift that's probably redefining marketing faster than anything else right now, discovery. So my first question is to you, Jasmine. Discovery is clearly shifting from traditional search results to AI-generated answers, with sponsored placements and advertising models emerging inside AI environments. How do you see search discovery evolving over the next few years?
Absolutely. It is changing. I would say it's already changed quite a bit. Nearly 50% of search is now done through AI. But it's on the one hand, it's the Wild West, right? Because everybody's trying to retool their products. At the same time, some fundamentals absolutely hold true when it comes to GEO, AEO, and SEO. It's not about, a flavor of the month idea. It's about making sure that you really deliver high quality content that's frequently updated, that you really rise above the noise, that you have the technical side of your content also done well. Because think of it as a two-sided coin, right? You could have a fantastic content. If it's not served up in the right technical background, it's not going to show up. Or you could have a fantastic technical setup, but if you don't have the right content, again, it's not going to show up. So to me, it's about consistent integrity. It's not about any kind of black hat tactics saying, oh, now you have to focus and do only this, but make sure that you keep a level field, you keep creating the right content that actually meets people's needs, right? Google, with one of its major recent updates a couple of years ago, introduced the concept of EAT. But when you think about, they started talking more about it, but it's nothing new. You want to have the execution, you want to have the expertise, you want to have the authority and the trustworthiness. And it's the same thing to show up on AI.
Absolutely. Content is still the king. That sets the stage very well. Thank you for sharing your insights, Jasmine. Ruth, building on that, we've moved beyond traditional SEO to what we call GEO and AEO, as Jasmine also mentioned. Instead of ranking on a page, brands now need to appear inside AI answers. What do you think? How should organizations rethink their visibility strategy in this new environment?
Yeah, it's so moving so fast. The best advice I can give is embrace it, because I think it was you who pointed out the vast, not majority, but a vast percentage of searches today. I mean, all of us are behaving this way. We're just asking Google very complicated questions and getting really good answers. So the whole keyword-driven search strategy of dear old SEO needs to be supplemented by these new techniques. The problem is that I don't think anyone really knows the perfect tools and techniques yet. And even if they figure them out, they'll probably change a week from then. So that means we all have to keep up and stay on top. But I am hearing from my friends who have been in SEO for years and are now experimenting with these new search behaviors, are really able to show results that are quite convincing that they're being found and they're helping their clients restructure their web pages in a way that helps them be found. So I'm hopeful. What I really recommend people do is hire an outsider, because the secret at this stage in the evolution is to get someone who's been experimenting with it maybe a couple of weeks more than you have.
Yes, true. Got your point there, Ruth. Arwinder, what's your perspective? What does this shift from search results to AI-generated answers really means for the marketing teams working on ground?
Nice. I'm glad, Shweta, you started with this. It's a very powerful question, because what we're witnessing today isn't just a change in the search behavior. I believe it's a change in how the decisions are getting influenced. We all know, we understand, we acknowledge that marketing teams for years used to optimize visibility inside the search engines, and that was this click-driven model. But now the discovery is increasingly shifting to one synthesized answer generated by AI. Because of all this, the priorities for marketing teams have also changed. And what today are important is, I think, marketers need to build clear authoritative content and not just optimized web pages. They need to build content which has authority behind them, the technical truth behind them. And they must just move beyond simple keyword strategy to building content which is like a problem solution kind of solving content. Now, second, I think marketing teams need to do is invest in structured data and machine learning readable assets. Because instead of writing long SEO optimized articles with blogs, etc., the marketing teams could now create knowledge assets like FAQs or expert commentaries or data points, the know-how guides that answer the buyer questions directly, and it makes it very easy for prospects or the customers, the buyers, to know about your brand. Another thing that marketing teams today can do, and which is a shift, is they need to invest in expert-led thought leadership content more. Because the AI engines once again prioritize the sources that demonstrate credibility, basically original research or industry-led SMEs, their brand. So in summary, I think what I'm trying to say is, the discovery channels have not just moved from the SEO era, which means that how do we get a page to rank on top, but they have moved to the AI era in which we all need to understand and prioritize it. How do we become the source that the AI trusts when generating the answer? It's like, an analogy is like SEO means is something like trying to get your book displayed on a shelf, whereas AEO is trying to get that idea quoted by the professor in your lecture. So if the professor has to quote your idea, of course, the idea must be coming from an authority, must be very clear, must have the expertise behind it, and therefore not just the volume. The volume doesn't matter anymore. It's the credibility, the authenticity, the authority, and the genuineness of your content that will matter. So some of the things that marketing team, and we all are practicing those as we understand.
True that. And we have a professor there on the panel today. Would you like to add on to that here?
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up. And of course, the analogy is charming. But I'm seeing more and more that thought leadership has to be impeccable and easy to understand. And I would add a warning that a number of marketers are relying on AI to develop their content. And we all know the word slop. And if you're going for quality and leadership in thinking, then it needs to be real and authentic.
Absolutely. So there has to be a real takeaway for the end user, and that has been underlined here again. So whether there's AI or there's not AI, but if you are giving the end user something good to take away, you're surely going to stand somewhere, maybe in AI or SEO. Absolutely true. So as visibility evolves, responsible data management becomes even more critical. Ruth, my next question is for you. For B2B organizations operating globally, why doesn't a single centralized consent strategy work across regions? And how do you think should companies rethink their approach here?
Yeah, you're talking about data privacy and compliance,
yes.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I confess that as a longtime B2B marketer, I felt less of a need to be so compliant as consumer marketers have over the last several decades. And there were two reasons for that. One is that I think the regulators were focusing their attentions mostly on the consumer side, because that's where the complaints come from. And secondly, because B2B buyers want information from their vendors so they can do their jobs better. So far from being annoyed, they welcome information that will help them cut costs and increase results. So that has been, I wouldn't say that we've neglected it in B2B, but it's been less of a priority. But things have changed, as you all have. It's what we're talking about here today, and the kind of blurring of the line between B2B and B2C is in full force today. And even though a business buyer wants information, he or she is not getting it through the same routes that they used to. And they're using a lot of consumery channels. The buyers are digital natives now, mostly, or at least at least half of the buying circle is going to be youngsters or otherwise, very comfortable with digital channels. In fact, they don't even want to meet with a salesperson, which of course makes a salesperson very sad and lonely. But it has meant that we marketers need to be more diligent on the B2B side. And so then the question becomes, well, how diligent? and most of the experts I know are saying, well, you've got to go to the highest common denominator, and that's pretty much GDPR.
I was going to say.
I'll be interested if the rest of you agree. The big way out, though, is to have a direct relationship with the target audience. So your current customers, you have implied consent there. So the extent to which you can get prospects and additional names at the same companies that you've done business with to opt in and otherwise give you implied permission, that's the way to go. So we have. Oh, and the other angle is that the United States is generally less strict about privacy matters, and it's a huge market. So we may be able to be a bit more lenient, except that certain states are now introducing GDPR-like privacy rules. So I think the highest common denominator is eventually going to win out.
Ruth, you're absolutely correct, because I was in a situation where we had a huge list and was an active list, and suddenly we got threat of a GDPR complaint because the person who had been a contact in the United States had suddenly moved to Ireland unbeknownst to us.
Wow.
And all of a sudden they were governed by, this legislation. So, and the legislation has real clause. People do not realize at the point when it was introduced, let's say if Walmart had a violation, they would pay billions of dollars in fees.
Yeah, wow.
So that's so important for global teams who are managing compliance at scale. So they have to be very, very vigilant about this. And
it's a rare, in the B2B world, it's a rare company that's not doing business internationally.
True. Absolutely. Jasmine, my next question is to you on the similar lines. At leadership level, how do you approach planning consent management across multiple regions? Like you already said, you've had an instance where such thing happened. So how do you plan to have consent management across multiple regions and without creating operational complexity and slowing growth?
So, as Ruth mentioned, you have to manage probably to the highest common denominator, which is GDPR. Then there are Canadian laws of double opt-in. And again, Ruth mentioned too that it's percolating in the US, particularly in California. And we know that California is one of the bellwether states in the United States, right? Most laws in the US start out California, New York, and Massachusetts, and then they spread, sometimes like brush fire. So when that happens, you have to be on the lookout. The Wild West reality that we have in the US may not last. Ruth was also right on saying, look, most companies out there are operating globally. So it's really important to be cognizant about it. But let's face one important factor. Again, Ruth touched on that. It's like build deeper relationships with your own clients. And if you really, again, I'll go back to the point of content. If you establish yourself as real thought leaders, not like easy slop producers. Don't get me wrong. I think AI produces some really cool articles really fast, sometimes better than the average American can write. Having said that, it's a trap, right? It's a very easy trap to fall into. So think of it as a holistic universe. Everything is interconnected. If you're taking a really strategic approach, if you're building your list in the right way without buying lists, and let's be honest, I have never seen a purchase list that really delivers to what it says it does. There are more tools now, you can do cleanup, whatever, but it's so much better to build from warmer, real, authentic relationships than to start from absolutely cold nurture. So reframe the thinking and try to do the right thing. Integrity at the end pays off. It may not be the fastest thing, but it also builds the deeper foundation for your long-term success.
Thank you. That's important for long-term goals. Yes, absolutely. Arwinder, how does this impact identity resolution, attribution models, and how customer data platforms are actually being used? You there, Arwinder?
Yeah, sorry. Come again, Shweta.
Yeah, sure. So, how does this impact identity resolution, attribution models, and how customer data platforms are actually used?
Yeah. So I, concur with what Ruth and Jasmine just said. So when we talk about global consent and data strategy, especially in B2B organizations, it is often seen that companies assume that a centralized framework would scale seamlessly across regions wherever their entities are. But in reality, it does not. And the reason is simple, because consent is not just a legal construct, it's not a framework mandated, but it's more rooted or deeply rooted in cultural, regulatory, and operational aspects of every region. Because different regions operate under different philosophies of data ownership. Some give permissions, there are permissions for some region for data use in certain way, whereas in certain other regions there is explicit opt-in or opt-out requested, just as in Canada or many European Union specifically. So coming to the point with the question you asked is, how does this affect data attribution and CDP platforms? Talking about identity first. Marketers in the early times have been, they could combine data from all the sources that they were looking at to create a single view of the customer and thereafter do marketing to that. But today, that profile of the customer has to be built only from the data that the customer has agreed to share and not the holistic data that you and I are collecting from any channel. Which means the CDPs that we have must operate in a way that the contact profiles dynamically adjust. And if somebody withdraws the permission or somebody opts in repeatedly. Talking about attribution, many times the tracking methods like third-party cookies, which are being restricted nowadays, because of those, marketers are not able to exactly see which campaign led to a purchase. So the teams now rely on first-party data, and that is good because and the broader patterns instead of just perfect tracking from a particular source. It's a more holistic tracking that we all have to do. The third part or the part of your question was the role of customer data platforms such as the Salesforce Data Cloud or the Adobe Real-Time CDP. Now, these platforms that help companies manage the consent or store the customer data responsibly and ensure that the marketing teams run the campaigns only on the data that the customers have approved or agreed as opt-in. Overall, the marketing is now moving from data that the companies could freely collect from all sources, and marketing could use that data to contact the prospects, the customers, and run campaigns on them. But today, we need to manage the data very responsibly. We need to use the data that the customers have allowed the brands to use. And the brands or the companies, whether it's B2B or it's B2C, who actually handle the data based on the consent management permissions responsibly, mindfully, are the ones which will gain the trust of their customers, and eventually I think customers will adopt them.
That's very well explained. Thank you, Arwinder. And once governance is established, measurement becomes the next big challenge, especially when traditional analytics models struggle to keep up. Arwinder, building on to what you just shared, I wanted to ask you further on this. Like, once consent and that data foundations are in place, how should marketers rethink their analytics strategy to better capture performance and revenue impact?
I love this part because personally, analytics is one area I really love to work upon. And you rightly said, as the consent and data governance policies tighten up, the traditional analytics models don't work as effectively as they would have originally worked. The marketers would, in the past, heavily rely on cookies or the last click attribution and tracking everything, just like what I said a few minutes ago. But now that the world has changed, and therefore the mind shift should also change accordingly. We as marketers need to move away from thinking about tracking everything to understanding the impact better and doing marketing accordingly. I can narrate over here a few practical shifts that I recommend that marketing teams can follow. Is number one, we move beyond just the last click attribution. models. We should combine different measurement approaches and contribution of the marketing to revenue, cost per acquisitions, etc., and not just clicks on the ads and campaign conversions and so on and so forth. Secondly, as marketing teams, I think I would like to say that we need to double down on our first party data collection, because that data has higher quality and it's more valuable. And to be able to get that intent data from prospects, marketers must build content which is gated or set up communities or webinars or loyalty programs that can help you predict the buyer behavior better than anonymous or random tracking. Third, I suppose marketers can align analytics to business outcomes so that instead of tracking perfectly, they do a holistic tracking and their marketing contribution is correlated to customer lifetime value, cost efficiency, and other metrics that are business-wise more important than just campaign conversions. And very important, all of us need to use AI wisely and under the strong guardrails of governance. While AI should support the marketing strategy, but I really recommend that it should not replace it. The strategy still should be your own, and you can make the AI work best under the human in the loop kind of a governance mechanism. Just as an example, think of a B2B SaaS company running campaigns on LinkedIn, running webinars, and doing emails randomly. Earlier times, a marketer could have credited one webinar attendance like this one for closing a deal. But in reality, the buyer may have seen the LinkedIn ad also, attended the webinar also, downloaded the guide, read a cheat sheet, and then finally spoken to sales before moving the deal forward. Now, modern marketing analytics focuses on measuring this collective influence of all these interactions on the pipeline and not just attributing to one single touch point.
True. Thank you so much for digging it up for us and bringing out that clear perspective, Arwinder. Jasmine, my next question is to you, that when data is fragmented across ecosystems, how should leadership teams interpret performance without over-attributing or drawing the wrong conclusions, just as Arwinder said?
That's a very important question. And actually, Arwinder did a great job talking about how to approach data. And you know what? The truth is, I think there is almost like a digital whiplash with data today. There's a lot of data and people very often drown in it, but it's what you do with it. I've long been a huge believer and practitioner of measure what you can act on, right? Even from my market research background, with my earlier roles in marketing before I moved to digital or market research, you should really measure what you can act on, what you can change, and focus on a few things, because we're in a sea of data and a lot of it comes, as you said, in fragmented areas. Sometimes too much is overinvested into something that could be absolutely of tertiary importance or no importance at all, or that really does not move the needle one way or another. And then I'm going to say something extremely contrarian. I used to go to Seattle for search engine lens conferences. I really would pay $3,500, if I'm honest about it, the conference attendance fee, to spend the 1 hour in the presence of Google executives. And usually those would be phenomenal sessions. The executives would come out. They would they would jam the cell phones. You were not allowed to take pictures, write anything down. The only thing you could carry out is what your mind, your brain carried out with you, because sometimes they would drop like confidential information. And one time, one of them said, there are two types of marketers. One measures everything and retools everything, and another one creates volume. Which one do you think wins every single time? And it's not the one that measures and ends up in paralysis. It's the one that constantly keeps doing, because sometimes data can actually, when I used to teach in my academic life, usually there would be a class on statistics, and I'd always say the best way to lie is with numbers. Because when you start out presenting numbers can be misinterpreted, numbers can mistell a story. So it's really important. While I'm in favor of data-driven decisions, you also have to have the right perspective about data. What's being measured, how it's being measured, and why it's being measured.
Yeah, that's an interesting and another way to look at it, Jasmine. Ruth, in B2B especially, where buying cycles are very long and journeys are multi-touch, how should organizations rethink performance measurement and revenue attribution?
Well, this has been a challenge since time immemorial because there's so many parties involved, multiple touch points. As you mentioned, time. I mean, in some industries, it can take 24 months to close a deal or more.
Yes.
And, the marketers are feverishly conducting outbound communications in the background while the salespeople are in the foreground trying to work out all the terms and close the deal. But there are some pretty good methods available. The problem is that they're not being used. And I loved your point about last click attribution, which is just so lame. It's a joke in my world anyway. But I'll just mention, I know over a dozen techniques to share, but I won't, run them down in detail. But some of my favorites are introducing end user sampling, which is a technique. I mean, Jasmine, you'll love this. It's basically market research where you go out after the sale and it's basically a did you buy survey.
Yeah.
And an interview, and it can be done through a digital format now that is, cheaper, faster, better, and it also, so it's relatively inexpensive, and it also solves the problem of overcoming unreported sales from channel partners, because you're going directly to the buyer and asking for feedback about what was the process that they used to come to us finally. I'm also a big fan of dear old data matchback, where we look at the people in the company that bought, and it's especially good, usable in high volume campaigns. It doesn't work when you have distribution channel partners involved, of course, because they generally don't want to share data with their client manufacturers. But it allows us to find out what went on in what touches took place into the account, and measure, get a sense of marketing's participation in moving closer to a sale. Now, the salespeople are going to hate you because they like to say, well, we were responsible for that deal, not you. I also love the use of product registration methods like warranties, and where you, similar to the did you buy survey, but it has a real value for the client, as well as the manufacturer, where you can ask questions about when they bought, what they bought, how much they paid, and it's also a good end run around a channel partner if needed. Exclusive offers can be used in a limited way, where what I'm really talking about here is making sure that you're baking direct response marketing tactics into every message you want to measure, because if you provide a motivational offer and a call to action, then the chances are pretty good that they'll respond and let you know, then you'll know which offer was most powerful. And then there's always dropping back and punting with, for example, just saying, okay, we marketers are only going to take responsibility up to the point where the lead is handed off to sales, and then we're out of here. And we can structure campaigns up until that point, measure them report on the cost per lead, cost per qualified lead, and so forth. And then maybe try attribution modeling or other statistical techniques to gain some insight. So it's a favorite topic, and the more methods you try out, the more experience you get, and the more others in your company will come to rely on them and appreciate them, because marketing tends to have a reputation for not caring about measurement. So the more we can show that we are responsible and ROI driven, the better off we are.
Clearly, measurement today requires a far more connected and intentional approach. And thank you for sharing those practical ways to do that, Ruth.
Thank you.
Ruth, my next question again is to you. And
okay.
Drawing from your experience in customer acquisition and retention, how can organizations move from running those disconnected multi-channel campaigns to building journeys that adapt in real time?
This is really harder than it sounds. I have two ideas about this. The first is, if you really wanted to go there and think, have an overview point of view about how we're going to manage our customers and prospects and build and deepen those relationships, then, as I said earlier, marketers often just duck and say, all we can do is surveys to measure awareness and brand studies and so forth. And where they tend to step up and embrace the responsibility of ROI reporting is when leadership demands it. And this then becomes political. Does the head of sales, the head of marketing, and the CEO to whom they report, do all three of those functions agree that measurement is essential for every dollar we spend? If they don't, then all is lost. So that's kind of on the human side. But once we've got agreement, then the silos get in the way. And even medium-sized companies, not to mention large corporations, have silos galore. And then there's territoriality and fighting over, who's going to take credit, not to mention how are we going to measure the credit. So that boils down to company culture. And this is something that I am certainly not expert in, but and it's not something that I think can be fixed without leadership. So sorry, I'm getting back to leadership again. Can't wait to hear what Jasmine has to say about this.
I do want to add another thing. I mean, today for marketing to be recognized or important or really do its job, it has to think of revenue marketing. How are we converting to revenue? But to do that, to Ruth's point, you have to be collaborating in the right way with the sales, with the operations, And also, you can't be in the silos, right? You cannot be siloed and think, this is what I do, this is where I give up, this is the end of the line for me. You have to truly collaborate. And frankly, the tug of war that very frequently exists between sales and marketing is really misguided. If they really work in a tag team, kind of dovetailing each other, they can deliver spectacular results. But then very often I've seen, like I had a situation, without naming the company, a multinational corporation, where the inbound leads for a certain, let's say, medical devices was up by 50%. That's great, right? Sales were up by 27%. Another great metric. And the marketing leader and the sales leader worked very closely together. But guess what? All of a sudden, revenue from all that activity was up by a big fat zero. And so the solution there is not to start blaming marketing or sales, but to start understanding what's going on. So in this particular case, I went to the facility that would have processed all those jobs. And I stayed there a few days, and usually around 9-10 a.m. when they're supposed to be really busy, it was busy 10%. Around 2-3 p.m. where they're supposed to be really, really busy, it was busy 50 to 60%. And then turns out there is an operations backlog. So you're bringing in leads, you're bringing in converted revenue, and you're not delivering on the product. That's really bad for the brand. And then you talk with that operational facility leader who thinks, well, we do not have enough people to start a second shift and finance won't let us pay overtime. Then you go to the CFO and you do modeling and you see that overtime would be justified. So the issue then is not about marketing, it's not about sales, it's deeper. This is where when you're not siloed, you can understand what's going on. So viewing marketing in isolation is a mistake. And frankly, in today's world, on the one hand, everybody should be part of the marketing effort. And the unfortunate part is everybody with a keyboard also thinks they're a marketer.
Great story.
Yeah, and just to add that, I would like to say one thing. Our CEO loves to make this statement: marketing is sales and sales is marketing. He's a strong believer, and that's what he charges us with. And I really agree with you both, ladies, and just want to second that comments that you made about leadership not working in silos. Actually, it's true. The product shipments in time, and the leads coming in, whether it's inbound leads or the leads that we collect through our events and webinars or digital campaigns, all of them, we funnel them to the sales. The top heavy funnel that we create, it really becomes very thin when it comes to MQLs converting to SQLs. And then the ratio even thins further when SQLs convert to wins. Now, the whole attribution of measurement rests is kind of credited or discredited to marketing if it's not very fancy. But I suppose it's a collective role of both sales and marketing, and behind them the delivery teams or the service or the product teams who are shipping that kind of a product. Because today, with this dynamic world where everything is so fast changing, and the speed is of essence, what I tell my team here locally is, guys, we really need to work with agility, speed, and be able to, course correct and innovate faster. Because only then, if you're doing things in real time, and we've seen this ourselves, when we follow up on event leads in the real time, we get higher conversion. The slightest of delay by any team, whether it's sales or uploading the leads into the CRM or the sales team following them, or a customer success manager, talking to the customer on any upsell opportunities, time is of essence as well. In ensuring that all the integrated campaigns that we have done as marketing teams really give the desired results. Sorry, Shweta, I just had to put in and say these statements.
No, but those are really helpful. And thank you so much for putting in your views, all three of you. And I'll come back to AI again, Jasmine. My next question is to you. AI and predictive models are becoming more embedded in marketing systems. And how do you see AI decisioning? How is it reshaping the way paid, owned, earned, and conversational channels work together?
Paid, earned, and conversational channels.
Yeah.
I think it's all kind of connected. Frankly, if anybody tells you that they know everything about AI, they're lying. I don't think that even the owners of, the large language models know what's happening, because we're seeing reports of AI turning even on themselves. So it's really interesting. So anybody who makes vast claims, they're really misrepresenting the truth. But as Ruth had mentioned earlier, it's being open to learning, staying very current and knowing what's going to happen, experimenting. I've always talked about, you have to have a playground where you run experiments. In marketing, you can never evolve without testing things, because some things will literally die on the vine and some things will bloom and take off. So you do not know what will work and what will not work. So becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable is a critical factor today in marketing with AI. It's becoming really helpful, but I'll go back to another issue. It's about your team, your people. Are they going to become fundamentally lazy and only do like AI slop? Because AI today, I was experimenting with Claude last night. It can come up even with business proposals, with templates. It does phenomenal things. But where do you become really lazy and in not really analyzing something yourself, in not applying it to your real context? And where do you rely solely on AI? That will make a huge difference. And also, do you have all the right people in the right seats? Like, I'm a huge believer in Gallup strengths and making sure you improve the effectiveness of marketing teams. And I've seen like marketing teams, without naming names, a major law firm, for instance, they have 60 marketers, so it's a really huge law firm. It took over 10 touch points between 4 of their people to make sure that they posted a single LinkedIn post, and they did it on a Friday at 4 p.m., which is probably universally one of the worst times to post on LinkedIn. After all that effort, right? So the other thing, forget about AI. Look at your people, show the leadership how your people are looking at AI and how your teams are structured and how you're maximizing both the AI and human potential in the right way.
True. It's about orchestrating whatever tools and whatever channels we have together very, very intelligently.
Yeah.
Yes. And this has been a very, very interesting and insightful and knowledgeable conversation. And I want to take this a step further and turn our focus onto what lies ahead. I'd love a quick forward-looking perspective from each one of you. Jasmine, what should leadership teams be preparing for in the next 12 months?
I don't have but I would say they should be prepared more for voice search coming up. That's expanding and increasing. So you need to be in place to be ready for that, because customers will increasingly start looking for that. The only constant these days is change. That probably has been true for a long time, but it's being accelerated. So you have to be prepared to be agile. And you have to also be able to focus. And by that, I mean what lies ahead. There will be so many storms, so many flavors of the week ideas. The teams that execute consistently with strategic focus, it's better to do 5 things exceptionally well than 15 in a super mediocre way. Those will come out ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Arwinder, from an execution point of view, how should marketing team plan for the year ahead?
Your mic is not on.
You're not audible, Arwinder.
You're muted.
Sorry. I said from an execution point of view, Shweta, I think the marketing teams need to focus from static annual plan making to making more adaptive customer outcome driven models and plans, which means because the market is evolving so quickly. It's AI everywhere. The search behaviors are changing. That's what we talked a few minutes ago. privacy regulations are becoming tight, and the buyer expectations are changing, and they are shifting so fast that the focus of marketing teams should also shift on building plans that are flexible yet anchored into the clear business outcomes. What Jasmine just said a few minutes ago, again, that we have to be aligned to the business people more. So marketing teams, another thing should start with revenue alignment. And the plans we all make shouldn't begin with campaigns or channels. Instead, we should begin with pipeline and growth targets. Now, once those are defined, marketing can easily map backwards to identify which channels or segments or geographies or accounts will drive that kind of a growth. Another creative thing I think we should do, or marketing teams could do, is adopt a quarterly execution rhythm rather than locking everything at the start of the year for full 12 months. And why? Because this allows the marketing teams to really adjust quickly as the market conditions or technology trends change, which are happening so fast that you cannot remain rigid. We also need to prioritize the use of AI in an intelligent yet very wise way. While AI, as Jasmine is saying, sloppy content. Now, let's not use AI just to increase the content output, but let's use AI mindfully to improve the targeting, the personalization bit, accelerate the experimentation part that marketers love to do, and drive decision making in a smarter way through AI-led or AI-powered analytics and dashboards. Now, the focus should move from just outcomes to better conversion rates or better CAC efficiency, and not just automation or productivity increase by AI. Finally, yes, I also firmly believe that execution should focus on fewer high-impact initiatives and not too many. Instead of everybody spreading resources thinly over multiple campaigns, marketing leaders could concentrate on a handful of strategic plays, including account-based marketing programs, or creating and developing high-value thought leadership content, or engaging on community platforms. Some of these really directly influence our pipeline. So, in a nutshell, summarizing, leaders today or in going forward into 2026 must focus less on activity, more on the impact. Less on campaigns, more on the systems, less on volume, more on the value.
Those were very important and practical points, Arwinder. Ruth, bringing it back to customer acquisition and sustainable growth. What should leaders keep front and center in the year ahead?
Well, I also have my three favorites. The first one we haven't discussed at all, I don't think, and that's keeping your data clean and up to date, which sadly I see so often is delegated, responsibility for which is delegated to a person in marketing ops who may or may not know how to do it. And the marketers who are actually investing big bucks in programs wash their hands and they say, oh, that, Mary in marketing ops does that, and doesn't take interest or responsibility. And that's shameful. So let's get our data hygiene going. And the second is better cooperation with sales. I mean, in B2B, there's no escaping that sales flies the plane and marketing serves the coffee. So we have to be, it's changing. So, but we have to make peace with these people and be good doobies. And then the third is to actually dive into the world of account management, where in the B2B world, the sales function is divided in two. One is business development, BDRs, for example. And then the other is account management. And companies, for some reason, delegate responsibility for account penetration and account retention to people trained in sales, which, great. They're really good at what they do. But marketers are also really good at account penetration and expansion and retention. And we have a lot of tools and techniques and experience and methods that can be handy. So I'm always encouraging marketers to step up and become more active in supporting the account management team as well as the new customer acquisition team. Thank you.
It's a powerful note to end on, Ruth. And I have a last question for Arwinder. We're almost time now, and I have a last question for you, Arwinder. When moving from static marketing automation to predictive AI-driven journeys, how do we set strict parameters in place to ensure that AI doesn't dilute our brand voice?
She's on mute again.
Arwinder, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, yes, that's a very important part before we close, because AI can act as a digital labor to marketers, but it should not be allowed to dilute the brand voice. It should implement a supervised brand voice. Is that what I want to say? And that can be done by, actually you can set system level instructions in your AI tools that decline or that define what AI cannot say. So, you're kind of feeding AI your brand book before you start asking AI to churn content. And therefore, you're telling that, the system level instructions tell AI what it cannot say, like specific jargons or competitive mentions, etc. You can also set certain reference libraries in your AI engine that you use internally, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Perplexity, so that the AI only pulls the content or which is pre-approved from our brand compliant, as per the creative assets that you've already fed into it as a library for its training. Important and very important. Implement human in the loop governance, which means regularly review your AI generated interesting moments in the Marketo or the HubSpot CRM tool, whichever you're using, to ensure that the tone of your content, your messaging remains consistent with the brand voice that you have established so far in the market. And last, you can frequently audit how AI search engines are citing your content to ensure that they aren't representing your brand score value or misrepresenting it in some other way, and so that your brand value proposition gets diluted. I really insist and I encourage that marketers follow some of these very simple tips and not just let AI work in a Wild West kind of a fashion.
That's a good takeaway to end this session, Arwinder. And if there's one theme that stands out today, it's this. Marketing today is about connecting signals, systems, and decisions in a way that drives measurable growth. Ruth, Jasmine, Arwinder, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience. And thank you to our audience who joined us. We hope today's discussion helps you clarify where to invest, what to refine, and how to build more intelligent, connected marketing strategy in the year ahead. Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you, Shweta.
Thank you, audience.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.